Good morning. So I want to welcome you all to this MS Views and News, MS Symposium here in Coleman, Alabama. I'm saying it like that because there are people online right now as well. So we want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank our wonderful sponsors. So we had, supporting the program, is SANDOZ, which is a division of Novartis. And our exhibitors, we had Alexion, Banner Life Sciences, Biogen, Bristol Myers Squibb, EMD Serono, Genentech, Novartis, SANDOZ, and Viatris. Why don't we give them a round of applause for supporting the program? Thank you very much. For everybody that doesn't know, my name is Stuart Schlossman. I too have multiple sclerosis. So we're going to welcome Sarah Ikenberry, who's a member of the FDA. She's with the FDA Biosimilars Division, and she's going to be speaking with you about biosimilars. She'll be speaking for about 20 minutes, and then we'll do 10 minutes of Q&A, and then I'll be back. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here today to talk to you and just give you a baseline overview of what biosimilars are and just some other basic information. FDA has approved biosimilars. I think there's 41 approved now, actually, to treat many types of chronic and severe conditions, such as skin diseases like psoriasis, chronic bowel diseases such as colon, such as Crohn's disease and irritable bowel disorders, diabetes, macular degenerations, some cancers. And from public information, there are multiple sclerosis biologics that will be coming off patent at some point in the next year or so. And so we definitely expect to see some biosimilar competition coming for those products. But before we go over biosimilars, I want to help you understand more about biologic medications. So biologic are medications that can be made from or in natural and living sources like animal cells and microorganisms such as bacteria or yeast. And so biologic medications are generally more complex than other drugs like aspirin, and they're much more complicated to make because they do come from these natural sources. And so one way to think about this is like a recipe for making bread or even beer or wine, because all of these biologic medications, including biosimilars, are similar to loaves of bread if they were made with the same recipe that includes yeast, which is a living source. And so no one loaf is an exact copy of the other loaf, but they're all the same type of bread. And the same is true for biologics. Each batch of biologic medication is made from a mix of ingredients that include these living sources. And because the living sources just have slight variations, each batch is not an exact copy, but each batch provides the same treatment benefits. So what is a biosimilar? A biosimilar medication is an FDA-approved medication that is very similar but not identical to an original biologic medication or brand medication. The FDA lingo for that is also called a reference product. So biosimilars have no clinically meaningful differences from the original biologic they were compared to. So this means you can expect the same safety and effectiveness from the biosimilar over the course of treatment as you would the original biologic or reference product. And so they're made from the same types of sources, like if living cells or microorganisms, they're just as safe and effective as their original product. And they're given at the same strength, dosage, and are not expected to cause new or worsening side effects. So why aren't biosimilars identical to the original biologics? And should you be worried that they aren't identical? And the short answer is no, because most biologics are made from these living sources. It is normal for both the biosimilar and the biologic, original biologic, to have minor differences between batches. And this is why they're called biosimilars and why they're not identical or a generic, but we'll go over that in another slide. So the original biologic has these same normal and expected variations, and the biosimilar matches these variations. And the approval process for this is extremely rigorous, and as part of the process, FDA reviews the differences between the original biologic and the biosimilar, which they compare the molecular structure and function to make sure it is the same structure and that it works the same, so the same function, to ensure that they're as safe and effective as the original. So I'm going to see, this just shows a little bit about what we do to make sure that biosimilars are safe and effective, which is, basically what I just talked about in the last slide. We're doing data, studies, and tests to decide whether the biosimilar meets the FDA's approval standards. And we have to ensure that the manufacturers also show there's no differences in side effects, including that the side effects of the biosimilar are not more frequent or severe than those of the original biologics. And then the biosimilar undergoes the same exact quality checks and procedures as the original biologics do. And so, like I said before, their biosimilars are kind of the same as generics, but not quite. And so they're both medications that are compared to an original or brand product for approval. And so they're both versions of FDA approved medications that are already out there. And they both may offer more affordable treatment options for patients. But the reason why one is a biosimilar and one is a generic is because they are approved through different regulatory pathways. But they both avoid duplicating certain costly clinical trials. But both of these products go through their own robust review process. And the other differences are that biosimilars are made from the living sources. Generics are generally made from a chemical that can be copied. And so the difference in the information needed to demonstrate that a biosimilar is biosimilar to another biologic can be more extensive than what is needed for a generic to prove they are a copy of a brand. And so I want to touch on interchangeable biosimilars. An interchangeable biosimilar is a biosimilar that may be substituted without consulting the prescribing doctor because it meets additional requirements related to the potential for automatic substitution. So it would work like this, just like, you're probably familiar with generics, is that you would get your prescription from the doctor and you go to the pharmacy to fill it. The pharmacist could give you the brand biologic, or they could give you the interchangeable biosimilar, which is very similar to how generics are substituted. Not all biosimilars are interchangeable because companies have to apply and specifically request that they get approval as interchangeable. And so not all companies do that. And so the difference between a biosimilar and an interchangeable biosimilar is nothing scientifically or clinically. They both must meet FDA's requirements for showing that they are highly similar and have no clinically meaningful differences from that brand product. But the law that governs biosimilars states that if a biosimilar is automatically substituted at the pharmacy, it has to be determined to be interchangeable. So therefore, the company, has to request that. But there are many reasons why companies do not seek interchangeability for their biosimilar, such as business reasons, or because the medication is administered at a hospital or an outpatient clinic, and you could not get it at your local pharmacy anyways. And so you may wonder if you should wait for a biosimilar to be approved as interchangeable to use it. And the answer there is also no. Both biosimilar and interchangeables meet the same high standards for biosimilarity, and they're both as safe and effective as the original, and they can both be used in place of the original biologic. The difference is really just that the pharmacist can substitute the interchangeable, and your doctor may, have to write the prescription specifically for the biosimilar. So why would you switch to a biosimilar? So there's a couple different reasons. If you're currently using a biologic and you're concerned about cost, you and your healthcare provider may want to talk about switching to a biosimilar. You may also be switched to a biosimilar similar to how, you are for generics, health insurance coverage. And so those are the main reasons, why people would consider switching to a biosimilar. And then will they save you money? So similar to generic drugs, they may cost less. And we know that biologics are often very, very expensive, and they can be unaffordable, especially for people using several medications. And so the goal of biosimilars is to offer more access to treatments at a lower cost. And, as discussed before, the biosimilar manufacturer doesn't have to duplicate certain clinical trials that the brand company had to do, which are very costly and lengthy. And so biosimilars cost less to make because of that. And so the hope is that lower cost will save patients money and that the biosimilars will be covered by more insurance companies. However, I will say that FDA does not have any input into the cost of drugs, and coverage and reimbursement depend on many different factors, such as your insurance or the formulary coverage. And so we always recommend that people check with their insurance provider or CMS for Medicare or Medicaid, depending on your plans. But I'd like to go over some of the resources that we have available in case you want to learn more for you or a family member. The first thing is the Purple Book. And so the Purple Book database is a public online search engine with information about FDA-approved biological products. And so this is where you can go to find information about reference or the brand product, biosimilar, interchangeables, but also a lot of other things like cell gene therapies, vaccines, et cetera. And so basically this is the database. And so you would go on, there's a simple search and advanced search. So depending on your needs and how much information you want to learn, you can just use the simple search and find, links to labeling and other basic information about the products, what's biosimilar or interchangeable to a brand product. Or you can switch over to advanced search and, do data downloads and advanced search filters and all sorts of different functionality. And then we also have a lot of resources for providers. And so this slide has a sample of some of the educational materials that we have. We have a couple of fact sheets, we have infographics, and we actually just released 3 videos this past June to replace some older video content that we had on our site. We also have continuing education courses that are free to take through Medscape. We have a biosimilar curriculum toolkit. And so this is a comprehensive resource that is intended for, faculty to educate students in healthcare professional degree programs like medicine, nursing, physician associate, pharmacy. And it's a modular program. There's a lot of different content where people, we're hoping they can just plug and play, grab it and add it to their already existing curricula. And so there's a couple different levels that provide a high level of overview of foundational biosimilar topics. And there's a more in-depth level, which looks more at the scientific and regulatory content if you're interested. We also do a lot of work with stakeholder engagement, similar to what I'm doing now, working with Stuart. And we also work with other government and non-government stakeholders to develop educational materials. And I have to say, one of my favorite materials is one that's focused on this page called Are You on a Biologic Medication? It has really great information. It's a very plain language. And I think it provides a lot of good information. We also have lots of resources for patients. We have some fact sheets, an infographic, and we're going to release a new video next week. So we're really looking forward to that. And so, I'm just going to kind of leave us, as with all treatment decisions, I encourage you to talk to your healthcare provider or other trusted sources of information to learn more about biosimilar treatment options. I think I said in the beginning, there's no approved biosimilars to treat multiple sclerosis, but brands such as Tysabri are coming off patent and will be open to biosimilar competition. And so I just wanted to provide you this understanding so that you could have information about various treatment options. And so thank you very much for your time. You can always go to our website to learn more. And I think I'm sticking around in case anybody has some questions.
Okay, 1 minute. We're going to get the questions. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for speaking. Everybody say thank you. Oh, she heard you. All right, Sarah, I got 2 questions for you right now. Anybody else have questions? Just raise your hand and somebody will pick them up and bring them over to me. Thank you. All right, first question. Do biosimilars undergo the same strict trials?
So, yes and no. They have to do a lot of different testing, but they don't do clinical trials. They do clinical studies, pharmacokinetic studies to see how the product moves through the body and is metabolized and all of that. But they do not generally repeat the clinical trials because the brand company's already done that. So the main goal of the biosimilar pathway is to demonstrate biosimilarity, and so that it's highly similar and that it works clinically the same. And so because the brand company's already done those clinical trials, we know that that's safe and effective. And if the biosimilar is similar and works the same way, then it too will be as safe and effective as the brand product. So the studies that they do are a lot different. It's basically the foundation is analytical. And so there's a very lot of different analytical tests like mass spectrometry and a bunch of others that I probably can't pronounce, but they're very sensitive. And so they can detect differences at a level that a clinical study can't anyways. So I guess the answer is no, there's no trials, but there's a lot of different other studies.
Okay, thank you for that. Next one is, who decides that the biosimilar is acceptable if the doctor is not needed for approval, an insurance or a pharmacist?
So the interchangeable biosimilar can be substituted by the pharmacist. Most states have laws, though, that say the pharmacist has to notify the prescriber within a certain amount of time, but they don't have to get prior approval. The biosimilar has to be prescribed by, your doctor or your healthcare provider. And so then presumably they would make the decision to prescribe that and hopefully discuss it with you in advance, especially if you were on something different before. I have been hearing a lot of doctors, they might not want to switch a stable patient on a product. And so they feel more comfortable starting a new patient on a product. But then we've also learned there's a lot of data about just wholesale switching people from one product to another at various clinical institutions like Kaiser, Permanente, and others that sort of handle their own formularies. And so that does happen as well. And the good news is there's not been any big safety signals or anything that we've seen from that. But as we all know, insurance companies and formularies do decide what's covered. And so that can impact what medication you receive.
Okay, thank you. If a biosimilar is required by an insurance company, but the doctor says that they want to keep their patient on brand medication, what is the process for that?
I'm not really privy to what that process is, but I'm sure it's the same process as it is with any other medication where the doctor has to call the insurance company and discuss it with them to see if they can get approval for that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have a person read the next two questions because his handwriting is like a doctor.
Because it is a doctor. So I don't want to be who I'm not. So first question, generics can fall between 80 and 125% of the brand. Is there a range with biosimilars?
No, there's not a prescribed range like that. Basically, they do look that it falls within a range of variability, but it's not like 80 to 120 or whatever the statistical situation is with the generics. I think it's probably a more narrow range for the biosimilars. I don't have any of the data to show because this is more for like a patient audience, the presentation, but we do have graphs that kind of show the plots of the reference product and the plots of the biosimilar, and they fall very, very closely along the same lines.
Thank you. And this is just a personal question, not going to hold you to it, but your opinion for life-changing events like a relapse in MS, a stroke, a seizure when you're driving, do you believe it's appropriate to use a generic that may be 80% the strength of brand name when it's not been tested at 80% the dose? When you have one stroke, one relapse, one seizure, that's, your life may be permanently changed. And I understand the need for generics and the cost in other things like pain control, hypertension, diabetes, where you have room to kind of adjust the generic. But when you can have one event and you're never the same person again, do you think a generic that's only potentially 80% the dose that's never been tested is appropriate?
So I can't really speak on the generic side because I work with the biosimilar and the biologics, and it's a very different testing rubric. Generics have to be bioequivalent. The studies that they have to show are different than what biosimilars have to show. So I can't really speak to the 80% not tested. I mean, the generics are tested, but I can't speak to that.
That was just more a personal opinion. You're not an FDA hat, but just kind of your hat as an individual.
Yeah, but I'm here on behalf of the FDA. And so, I mean, if I had an opinion on that, I would let you know. But because like I said, I really don't work on the generic side. Like most of my focus is on biologics. And so I'm not really as familiar with how the generic situation is. But I do know that this 80 to 120 thing is kind of like a boogeyman. It's not like, it isn't exactly that it's 80% of the product or 120% of the product. It's a much narrower range than that. And that's just some sort of one statistical peak. And I'm pretty sure that it isn't that variable with the generics, but there's sort of a misperception that is that those broad ranges are allowable. So but again, I don't really know exactly like what is happening with all of that since I don't work on the generic side.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions? Did I miss anybody? Oh, I guess so. Here we go. If, for example, Biosimilars is made by Biogen, who makes the biosimilar?
Like if a biologic is made by Biogen, the brand, who makes the biosimilar? Well, it depends. So there's several different biosimilar manufacturers. Most of them are larger companies, though, like Teva or Coherus, Boehringer Ingelheim. I feel like Biogen might have biosimilars too. I'm not really sure, or Genentech, but they're mostly larger companies that are making biosimilars right now. Amgen makes them, and so a lot of the brand companies also make biosimilars because biologics are, more technically complex, and it costs a lot more to make them. You're not really seeing some of these small companies like you would with generics making them, because you have to have a ton of infrastructure in order to produce the products. So I'm going to take that. I don't know if that really answered your question.
Thank you for your answer, Sarah. But I'm going to answer that a little bit more specific since you're asking about Biogen and a biosimilar. The biosimilar for natalizumab that is awaiting FDA approval right now it's only called natalizumab biosimilar right now, and that's by SANDOZ. So SANDOZ is a pharmaceutical company that was exhibiting in the back of the room today and is the sole supporter of this educational program. All right, next question. So basically, this is talking about generics of MS treatments. Not really, but I'll let you answer that.
I'm sorry, what was the question? So the
person is asking if this is basically talking about generics. Is this the same as talking about generics?
I mean, it's the same concept. Like, we just don't call them generics because a generic can be, most of them, if it's small, a small molecule like insulin and erythropoietin, some other things, like they're much smaller. Like you can almost exactly copy those, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to at some point. But with these large monoclonal antibodies and stuff, I mean, you're talking millions and millions of molecules in a batch or a dose or whatever. And so those you can't exactly copy millions and millions of something, but it has to match the variations that are in the existing product. So that's why it's not called a generic, but it's essentially the same concept. There's a brand, somebody comes and makes a copy of it. You test it to make sure it's a true copy of it, and therefore you can extrapolate that it'll be safe and effective, just like the brand.
Thank you much. And thank you very much for your presentation today. And now you could go take care of your children. Thank you.
Hey, they're at a swim meet, so I've got the house to myself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I do want to say thank you again to everybody that's online and thank our supporters, all of our sponsors. We mentioned them all earlier, and that's it. Time's over for all of you online. Thank you. Have a great day.